Before we start, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's B-scan story 1. The passenger in seat 13. I was about 3 miles past the last chain-up area when my passenger seat sensor went off. That was the first thing. Not the woman, not the radio, not the old road in the trees. Just a soft little chime from the dash, the kind you hear when somebody heavy enough sits in the passenger seat without buckling up. Except I was alone, and I had been alone since Boise. My name's Ray Mercer. I'm 48 now, and at the time this happened, I'd been driving long haul for almost 23 years. I was running a Freightliner Cascadia for a smaller outfit out of Ogden, mostly refrigerated loads, medical freight, and the occasional high-value electronics job when one of the bigger carriers couldn't cover a lane. That night, I was hauling temperature-controlled pharmaceuticals from Boise down towards Salt Lake. Nothing dramatic, just sealed totes inside a reefer trailer, all logged, numbered, and watched by more trackers than I cared to count. The seal was clean. The reefer was holding steady at 36 degrees. My eld had enough time to get me over the pass and down into a warehouse yard before sunrise. It was late November, cold enough that the shoulder looked silver under the headlights. I remember the road more than anything. It was one of those mountain highways that feels like it was cut through the dark with a knife. Trees tight on both sides, rock face on one shoulder, nothing but drop-off and guardrail on the other. Every curve looked the same. Every reflector flashed up and vanished like an animal's eye. I wasn't sleepy. That's important. I was tired in the regular way, sure. Every driver is tired past midnight. But I wasn't nodding off. I had coffee in the cup holder, the cab heater low, and an old AM station fading in and out between weather reports. I had just finished checking my mirrors when the chime came from the dash. Passenger seat occupied. Seat belt unbuckled. I looked at the seat, empty. The passenger seat in that Cascadia had a worn grey cushion, a clipboard tucked into the side pocket, and a reflective vest folded over the armrest. Nothing else. I stared at it for maybe 2 seconds, then looked back at the road because you don't get to keep your eyes off a mountain highway for long. I figured it was a bad sensor. Cold weather does weird things to wiring, especially in a truck that's been passed around the fleet a few too many times. The chime stopped. I reached over and slapped the seat once without looking, just enough to jostle the cushion. "Knock it off," I said. Like the truck could hear me, the chime stayed quiet. For the next 10 minutes, everything was normal again. Normal for that road anyway. The reefer hummed behind me, steady and low. The cab rattled over frost cracks in the pavement. My headlights caught patches of fog hanging over the road, thin enough to drive through, but thick enough to make the trees look closer than they were. Then, the passenger seat chime came back. Same soft tone, same warning on the dash. Passenger seat occupied, seat belt unbuckled. This time, when I glanced over, there was a woman sitting there. I didn't swerve. I don't know how I didn't. Maybe I didn't process it fast enough. Maybe some part of my brain decided. The road was more important than whatever impossible. Thing was happening 2 feet to my right. She was sitting straight up in the passenger seat, with her hands folded in her lap. She looked maybe 30, maybe younger. It was hard to tell. Her hair was dark and wet, hanging in strings against the sides of her face. She wore a pale blouse, the kind you might wear to an office job, except it was torn at one shoulder and stained down the front with something dark. She didn't look at me. She looked straight through the windshield. I blinked hard and looked back at the road. For a few seconds, I told myself I had seen the folded vest and clipboard in some weird shape. Exhaustion, reflections, headlights, the kind of thing your mind does when it's late and you're alone too long. Then I looked again. She was still there, same position, same folded hands, same blank stare through the windshield. I checked the passenger door lock. It was still down. I looked at the mirror. No other vehicle behind me, No lights. No pull-off close enough for anyone to have jumped in. The door had never opened. I would have heard it. In that kind of cold, with the pressure change and the road noise, a door opening on a moving truck would have been impossible to miss. I kept driving. That sounds wrong, but stopping felt worse. There was no shoulder wide enough to safely pull a loaded rig over, and I wasn't about to put myself outside on a freezing mountain road with a woman who had appeared in my cab without using the door. I turned on the dome light. The cab filled with that weak yellow glow. She was gone. The passenger seat was empty again. The reflective vest lay across the armrest, exactly where it had been. Clipboard in the pocket, no wet mark on the cushion, no smell, no sign anybody had ever been there. I let out a breath. I didn't realize I was holding and shut the dome light off. The second the cab went dark, the chime sounded again. Passenger seat occupied, seat belt unbuckled. I didn't look right away. I kept my eyes on the road and tightened my hands around the wheel until my knuckles started aching. Then I turned my head just enough to see her in the corner of my eye. She was back, but now her head was turned slightly toward me. Not all the way, just enough that I could see one eye beneath her wet hair. It was open too wide. I said nope, just that. Not loud, not dramatic, nope. I reached for the CB and keyed the mic. Northbound driver on the pass. Anybody got ears on? Static. Not the normal kind either. This was heavy, close static, like somebody had opened a channel but wasn't speaking. I switched channels and tried again. Any driver out near mile marker 180. I need a radio check. More static. The woman didn't move. I grabbed my phone off the mount. No signal. In the mounts, but seeing it right, then made my stomach tighten. I set it back in the cradle and watched the GPS. The blue route line curved ahead through the pass. Arrival time, 4:47 a.m. Then the screen flickered. For 1 second, the route line jumped. A thin grey side road appeared off to the right, cutting into the trees where no road was supposed to be. Then the screen corrected itself. I leaned forward, squinting. I'd driven that pass before, not often, but enough to know the main road. There were old maintenance roads out there, abandoned logging cuts, fire access trails, things that didn't show up on regular maps anymore. Drivers didn't use them. Most were gated or washed out. I looked over again. The woman had moved closer. Not a lot, but enough. Her shoulder was no longer touching the passenger door. She was sitting more toward the middle of the seat now, angled slightly toward me, knees pointed forward, hands still folded in her lap. She had not made a sound. I looked away, counted to 3, and looked back, closer again. Her right knee was almost touching the center console. That was when I started talking out loud, not to her exactly, more to myself. You're tired, and you're seeing things. Keep the truck in the lane, watch the grade, find a lit place, do not stop here. I checked my mirrors again. Empty road. No headlights behind me, no headlights ahead. Just black trees, white fog, and reflectors bending around the mountain. The radio crackled. Not the CB, the company radio. We had this separate unit mounted under the dash for dispatch calls when cell service was bad. It almost never worked right in the mountains, but sometimes it caught enough signal to push through. Push. The speaker hissed. Then my dispatcher's voice came through. Ray? I grabbed the handset so fast I almost dropped it. Yeah, I'm here. You hearing me? Static swallowed the reply. I pressed the mic again. Angela, I've got something wrong with the truck. Passenger's seat sensor keeps tripping, and I'm getting weird GPS jumps. You able to see my location? For a moment, only static. Then a voice answered. It wasn't Angela. It was lower, closer. Like someone speaking from inside a room with carpeted walls. Don't ask her where she died. I stopped breathing for a second. The truck drifted toward the fog line, and I corrected hard enough that the trailer pulled against me. The reefer hummed. The tires sang against the cold pavement. I stared at the radio. The speaker hissed again. Ray? Angela's voice came back, faint and broken. Ray, say again, you cut out. I pressed the mic. Angela, who else is on this channel? What? Who else is on this channel? Nobody. Just me and Fleet. What's going on? Woman's head turned another inch toward me. I could see both eyes now. She still hadn't blinked. I said, I need you to stay on with me until I get off this pass. Angela must have heard something in my voice because she stopped sounding annoyed. Copy. Your tracker shows you near the old Summit Road. You're still moving south. Everything okay with the load? Load's fine. Truck? Driving. That's not what I asked. I glanced at the passenger seat. The woman was leaning forward now. Not enough to touch me. Just enough that her wet hair hung past her shoulders. I said, I'm seeing somebody in the cab. Silence. Then Angela said, Ray, pull over at the next safe turnout. No, Ray, no safe turnout here. Not with this road. Not with this load. Did somebody get into your truck? No. The radio went quiet. Then, behind Angela's faint breathing, I heard the other voice again. Don't ask, Angela said. What was that? You heard it. I heard something. The woman lifted her right hand, slowly. Her elbow moved like it hurt. Her hand rose from her lap, pale fingers unfolding one by one, and she pointed through the windshield toward the right side of the road. At first, there was nothing there, just trees. Then my headlights caught a break in the timber, a gap, a narrow opening between two leaning pines, almost hidden behind brush and snow. Behind it, I saw cracked pavement, old pavement, a road barely wide enough for one lane vanishing into the dark. My GPS flickered again. The grey side road appeared. No name, just a thin line cutting through the trees. Angela's voice came through the radio. Ray, your route just changed on my end. I didn't change it. It's telling me you're turning right. I'm not. The woman kept pointing. The opening in the trees got closer. I saw an old sign half buried in brush, tilted so far that I almost missed the letters. Summit Access 13. The number caught my eye because our fleet had a stupid naming system for camera inputs. Driver-facing camera was channel 11. Road-facing was 12. Passenger seat sensor was 13. Seat 13. The passenger in seat 13. The woman's finger trembled, not from fear, from insistence. The truck rolled toward the hidden road. I put both hands on the wheel and stayed in my lane. The woman's head snapped toward me. That was the first fast movement she made. Her face was fully turned now, inches closer than before, and for the first time I noticed the left side of her skull looked wrong. Flattened, dark hair matted against it. A line of dried blood curved behind her ear and down her neck. The radio hissed. The voice whispered again. Don't ask her where she died. I didn't ask anything. I passed the road. The opening slid past my passenger window, swallowed by trees. The woman's pointing hand stayed raised, but her head slowly turned forward again. For a few seconds, I thought maybe that was it. Maybe I had made the right choice. Maybe whatever she wanted, I had refused it. Then she moved closer. This time I saw it happen. Not like a person shifting in a seat, more like the space between us folded. 1 second she was in the passenger seat. The next, she was half over the center console, her knees still facing forward, but her upper body angled toward me. Her wet hair brushed the edge of my coffee cup. The cup slid 2 inches on its own. I hit the brakes without meaning to. The trailer pushed behind me. The ABS fluttered. The cab rocked forward, and I heard the cargo straps groan through the bulkhead. I let off and corrected. Ray? Angela shouted through the radio. Ray, what happened? She's closer. The words came out before I could stop them. Angela didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter. Ray, listen to me. Keep driving. I've got highway patrol trying to reach you, but you're in a dead zone. There's a maintenance garage 12 miles south of you with lighting and cameras. Can you make 12 miles? I checked the dash. 12 miles, on a mountain road at night, with a dead woman moving toward me every time I looked away. Yeah, I said, I can make 12. The woman's face was turned toward me again. Her eyes were not angry. That made it worse. There was no expression at all. No pleading. No rage. Nothing human enough to understand. I started doing what I knew how to do. I drove. I focused on the lane. I watched my speed. I used the engine brake carefully on the downhill curves and kept the trailer from pushing me too hard. I checked mirrors without turning my head too much. I forced myself to breathe through my nose, slow and steady, like I was driving in ice. Every few minutes, the passenger seat chime sounded again. Each time, she was closer, her shoulder over the console, her hand near my gear selector, her face near the edge of my peripheral vision. Once I felt cold air move against the side of my neck, like somebody had leaned close enough to breathe there, but she never spoke, never blinked. And I never asked her a thing. At mile marker 169, the radio came alive again. "Not Angela," the other voice. This time it didn't whisper. It sounded like it was speaking through clenched teeth. "You should have turned." The woman's hand dropped from the console and touched my wrist. I almost lost the truck. Her fingers felt wet and freezing. Not cold like outside air, cold like metal pulled from a freezer. I jerked my wrist back, and the truck drifted over the center line. Headlights appeared around the next curve, sudden and bright. I hit the horn and corrected. The oncoming vehicle, a snowplow with its blade raised, blasted past me, so close the whole cab shook. For half a second, the plow's amber lights filled the windshield and lit the inside of my cab. The passenger seat was empty. Then the lights passed, darkness returned, and she was back. Now she was not sitting in the passenger seat at all. She was standing hunched in the narrow space between the seats, bent forward because the cab ceiling wasn't high enough for the way her body wanted to stretch. Her face was maybe 8 inches from mine. I kept my eyes on the road. I could see her only as a pale shape beside me. Angela's voice came back, broken but real. "Ray, maintenance garage in 2 miles. Stay with me." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The woman's face leaned closer, closer. The smell hit me then. Wet earth, old blood, and something like lake water trapped under ice. My headlights caught a yellow sodium light ahead through the trees. The maintenance garage. I saw a plowed turnout, 2 bay doors, a state truck parked outside, and a camera mounted on a pole by the gate. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The woman lifted her hand again. This time she didn't point toward the trees. She pointed at me. The radio said, "Ask her." I shook my head. The voice said, "Ask her where." The woman's mouth opened. No sound came out. Her jaw lowered too far, farther than it should have. And I saw black water spill over her lower lip. I pulled into the maintenance turnout without slowing much, air brakes hissing hard as the trailer straightened behind me. I stopped under the light, slammed the truck into neutral, set the brakes, and turned on every interior light in the cab. She was gone. The seat was empty. The chime stopped. For a while, I just sat there under that yellow light with both hands on the wheel. A state maintenance worker came out of the building with a flashlight and a confused look on his face. He asked if I was broke down. I said, "No, I just need a minute." Angela stayed on the radio until my cell signal came back. Highway patrol called me 10 minutes later. I didn't tell them a ghost had been in my truck. I told them I had experienced possible carbon monoxide symptoms or fatigue hallucinations and needed to check the cab. That sounded more reasonable. That sounded like something a man could say and still keep his job. They had me sit while a trooper checked the truck. No exhaust leak, no cab leak, no sign the passenger door had opened, no wet marks, no footprints, nothing. When I reached the warehouse outside Salt Lake a little before dawn, I still felt like I was driving with someone beside me. The receiver was an older guy named Dennis, who had worked night docks for 30 years. He saw my face and asked if the pass had been bad. I said, "You know anything about an old Summit Access road up there?" His expression changed. "Not a lot, just enough," he said. "You don't want that road." I asked why. He shrugged and looked down at the bill of lading. "Bad turn, old wreck, years ago." "What kind of wreck?" He handed my paperwork back. "Driver, missed the curve." went off with his wife riding passenger. Truck burned, but they found her a ways down from the cab, near that access road. Folks said she must crawled. Then he added, real quiet, but I don't know, I wasn't there. After unloading, I sat in the lot and pulled the dashcam footage. I had to know. Our trucks recorded road view, driver view, and a wide interior angle. I scrubbed back through the trip with my hand shaking on the tablet. For 6 hours, the passenger seat was empty. Every time I remembered seeing her, the footage showed nothing. The seat sensor still tripped. The warning light still flashed. I could see myself glancing over, talking to nobody, stiffening at things that weren't there. At the hidden road, my head turned slightly and I drove past it. The passenger seat remained empty. Almost the entire time there was one frame, one single frame. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the woman was sitting beside me, not looking through the windshield, not pointing at the road. She was turned toward the camera, staring directly into it. And in that one frame, her hand was resting on my wrist. The next story came from a driver who swore he never picked up strangers before that night and never even slowed down for one again after it. Story 2, the hitchhiker. Who knew tomorrow I don't pick up hitchhikers? Most drivers don't. That's not because we're heartless. It's because a truck cab is a small space, and once you let somebody in, there's no easy way to get away from them. You're 80,000 pounds of steel moving through the dark, but inside that cab, you're just a person sitting close enough for a stranger to reach across and grab the wheel. So when I tell you, I picked up a man walking alone on Highway 34 in a thunderstorm, understand that I didn't do it because I wanted company. I did it because I thought I was watching somebody die. My name's David Harlan. Most people call me Harlan. I was 42 when this happened, driving a Kenworth T680 for a regional carrier out of Lincoln, Nebraska. I had 14 years behind the wheel by then, mostly dry van and reefer loads, nothing glamorous but steady work. That night, I was hauling palletized auto parts from Iowa to western Nebraska, trying to get ahead of a weather system that had already turned ugly by the time I crossed into the more open country. It was early April, rain blowing sideways, wind pushing hard against the trailer, the kind of storm where the wipers can't really keep up, and every time lightning flashes, the road looks fake for half a second. Dispatch had already called twice, asking if I wanted to shut down. But my EL still gave me enough hours, and I was trying to make it home by the next evening. My wife, Marcy, had a doctor's appointment Friday morning. Nothing serious, but important enough that I'd promised her I'd be there. That promise was in my head all night. Get the load dropped, get some sleep, get home. Around 11:40, I passed through a little town where almost everything was closed except a gas station with one pump light flickering. I topped off the tanks, checked the seal, walked around the trailer in the rain, and got back in, soaked from the knees down. A clerk inside told me the bridge west of town had been fine an hour earlier, but the creek was rising. I should have stopped there. But truckers are very good at convincing themselves they can make the next safe place. 20 miles later, the storm got worse. The road narrowed between open fields, no streetlights, no houses close to the pavement, just fence posts, ditches full of brown water, and lightning rolling over the horizon. That's when I saw him. At first, he was just a shape at the edge of the headlight beam, a person walking on the shoulder, no umbrella, no bag, no reflective vest. He was wearing jeans and a dark hoodie that was plastered to him from the rain. Every gust of wind shoved him toward the lane, and twice I watched him stumble close enough to the white line that my stomach tightened. I slowed down, not to pick him up, just to pass safely. But as I got closer, lightning flashed and I saw his face turn toward me. Young guy, maybe 20, pale, terrified. He raised one hand, not like he was hitching a ride, but like he was warning me to stop. I kept rolling past him, slow. Then in the mirror, I saw him fall. Not sit down, fall. 1 second upright. Next second, on his hands and knees in the gravel shoulder, with rain hammering down on him. I cursed, hit my hazards, and eased the truck onto the shoulder as far as I safely could. The trailer tires hissed through water. The wind rocked the cab. I sat there for 3 seconds trying to make the safe decision. Then I grabbed my flashlight, cracked the passenger window, and shouted over the rain, "You hurt?" He got to his feet slowly and stumbled toward the cab. I didn't unlock the door right away. I pointed the flashlight at him through the glass. "Stay there. You got a weapon?" He shook his head. His lips moved, but I couldn't hear him over the storm. I looked up and down the road. Nothing. No disabled vehicle. No farmhouse close. No light behind him. No one waiting in the ditch. I unlocked the passenger door. "Get in." Hands where I can see them. He climbed up like he knew how to enter a truck, using the steps correctly, one hand on the grab bar. He closed the door behind him, and rainwater poured off him onto the rubber mat. The first thing he said was, "Don't go around the next bend too fast." I stared at him. No thank you, no explanation, just that. He was breathing hard, but his voice was calm. I said, "What?" "Next bend," he said. "Pickup's upside down in the ditch. Driver's still in it." I looked through the windshield. The road ahead curved left through a line of cottonwoods. I couldn't see beyond it. I grabbed the radio mic and tried to call it in, but the CB gave only static. My phone had one flickering bar, then none. I looked at the kid again. "How do you know that?" He didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the road. I should have made him get out right there. That's what I tell myself now. But the storm was bad. He was soaked and shivering, and the next safe place was maybe 30 miles west. So I put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway. Slow, very slow. When I rounded the bend, my headlights caught the pickup, upside down, half in the ditch, half in the weeds. Steam or smoke coming off the engine. I hit the brakes and stopped as safely as I could, hazards flashing against the rain. I looked at the young man. He stared straight ahead. I said, "Stay in the truck." I climbed down with my flashlight and ran to the pickup. The driver was alive, pinned upside down, conscious but bleeding from his forehead. I got enough cell signal to push a broken 911 call through, then tried the CB again until a trucker 5 or 6 miles back answered. I gave him the mile marker and told him to relay it if he had better service. The young man never left the cab. When I climbed back in, soaked and shaking, he said, "Ambulance gets here in 12 minutes. I wiped rain from my face. "How would you know that?" He looked at me for the first time. "I just do." I thought maybe he had seen the wreck before I did. Maybe he'd been in the pickup. Maybe shock was making him talk strange. I asked him his name. "Ellie," he said. "Ellie what?" He looked back at the windshield. "Just Eli." I told him I was taking him to the next town and dropping him somewhere public. Gas station, sheriff's office, anywhere with lights. He nodded like he already knew. The ambulance arrived 13 minutes later. Close enough that I told myself his guess had just been lucky. I gave a quick statement to a deputy, stayed in the cab because of the storm, and pulled back onto the highway when they waved traffic through. Eli sat in the passenger seat with his hands resting on his knees. He hadn't buckled his seatbelt. The chime never sounded. That bothered me more than it should have. Maybe the sensor was bad. Maybe he was too light. Maybe I was looking for things. 5 miles later, Eli said, "Deer comes from the right." I looked at him. "What?" "Don't swerve. Brake straight." I opened my mouth to tell him to stop doing that. Then a deer exploded out of the ditch on the right. Not trotting, flying. It hit the edge of my headlight beam and leapt directly into the lane. I braked straight, exactly like he said. Hard enough that the trailer pushed, but not enough to jackknife. The deer slid on the wet pavement, scrambled, and vanished into the dark. If I'd swerved, I would have put the rig in the ditch. I pulled over again, breathing hard. Rain beat against the roof. The wipers thumped back and forth. I looked at Eli. He looked tired, not scared, just tired in a way that made him seem older than he was. I said, "Who are you?" He said, "Somebody who didn't get picked up in time." I didn't know what to do with that. I grabbed my phone. No signal. I tried the CB. Static. I switched channels. More static. Eli said, "Bridge is out 50 miles ahead. That bridge was open an hour ago. It won't be when you get there." I leaned back in the seat and rubbed both hands over my face. "Listen to me. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if this is some prank, or if you're on something, or if you saw all this happen somehow, but you need to stop explaining." He turned his head toward me. His hair was still dripping, but the cab didn't smell wet anymore. That was the first time I noticed it. He had been soaked when he got in. Water had poured off his hoodie, but now the passenger seat looked dry. The floor mat was dry. His clothes looked damp, but not soaked. There was no puddle, no wet footprint on the step. "Nothing," he said. "You have a blue house with white trim." I stopped moving. "My wife's name is Marcy," he said. "She keeps a spare key under the clay flower pot, even though you told her that's the first place anybody would look." I didn't speak. "Your porch light flickers when it gets cold. You've been meaning to fix it since Christmas." I reached down slowly and put my hand near the tire thumper I kept beside the seat. Eli saw me do it. He didn't react. "Your daughter's room is still painted yellow," he said. "Even though she moved out 2 years ago." I said, "Shut up." He did, for about 10 seconds. Then he said, "You're not supposed to make it home tonight." I pulled the truck back onto the road, not because I wanted to keep driving, but because sitting still with him felt worse. My mind was working through possibilities. He could have gotten my name off the door, or paperwork somehow. Maybe he saw my DOT number, looked me up, found social media, found Marcy's account. People are careless online. Families post too much. There were logical ways to learn some things, but not the porch light, not the spare key, not the color of my daughter's old bedroom. Rain hammered the windshield so hard, the world beyond the headlights looked like moving glass. I said, "What happens?" Eli looked at me. "What happens if I keep going?" He was quiet long enough that I regretted asking. Then he said, "You stop at the bridge because there are cones across the lane. A man in a county vest waves you down. He asks you to step out and look at the washout. You leave the keys in the ignition because you think you'll only be out for a second." I stared ahead. "He's not county," Eli said. "There are 2 more under the bridge. One takes the truck. One takes you." My mouth went dry. "What do they do with me?" Eli didn't answer. The road curved between 2 fields. Lightning flashed, showing rows of fence posts and water pooled in the ditches. I said, "What do they do with me?" Eli looked out his window. "You don't make it home." That was enough. I slowed down and started looking for a safe place to turn around. The problem was the road had no shoulder wide enough for a full turnaround, and backing a tractor trailer in a thunderstorm on a rural highway is a good way to become your own accident report. A mile later, I saw a gravel maintenance lot on the left, probably used by county plows. It was dark but wide enough. I signaled early. Eli said, "Don't turn in there." I laughed once, not because anything was funny. "You got a prediction for every road now?" "Yes, what's in there?" He looked straight ahead. I passed the lot. In the mirror, lightning flashed again. For 1 second, I saw my own truck sitting in that gravel lot. Same Kenworth, same trailer, same side marker lights, parked at an angle, driver door open. Then the lightning was gone, and the lot was empty. I kept driving. The next few miles felt stretched thin. Eli told me things before they happened, and every one of them happened. A branch across the right lane, a black cow standing by the fence line, a patrol car passing the other direction without stopping because it was heading to the pickup crash behind us. Each time, I tested him in little ways. I slowed when he didn't tell me to. Nothing happened. I sped up a little without warning. He said, "Don't push it. Hydroplane patch." After the next sign. There was standing water after the next sign. I asked him what town we were heading toward. He said, "Not the one on the map." That made no sense until my GPS froze. The screen still showed the blue route line, but the road names went blank. Then the destination jumped. Instead of the warehouse drop in North Platte, it showed my home address. Arrival, 3:17 a.m. I hadn't entered my home address. I pulled the power cord from the GPS. The screen stayed on. Eli said, "It does that when it wants you to think you still have a choice." I didn't like that word. It? Eli didn't answer. Then he said, "Your wife wakes up at 2:42. I gripped the wheel harder. She checks her phone. No missed calls. She thinks that's good. Then she hears your porch light flickering. Stop. She goes to the window. Stop. She sees your truck parked outside. I turn toward him. My truck can't fit on my street. I know. Rain filled the silence between us, he said. That's why she opens the door. I don't remember deciding to stop. I just remember seeing an old church set back from the road. Its signboard crooked. One security light buzzing above the parking lot. It wasn't much, but it was lit. And there were houses less than a mile back. I pulled in, set the brakes and grabbed my phone. One bar. I called Marcy. It rang 5 times. She answered groggy and scared. "David, lock the doors." "What?" "Lock the doors right now. Check the porch light, but don't open the door." "David, what's going on?" "Just do it." I heard movement on her end. A few seconds later, she said, "The porch light's flickering." My stomach dropped. "Turn it off." "It won't turn off." "Marcy, listen. Do not open the door. Call 911 and tell them someone may be outside the house." "Are you messing with me?" "No." Eli was staring out through the windshield at the church. He said quietly. "Too early." I covered the phone. "What?" "You stopped too early." Something struck the side of the trailer. A hard metallic bang. Then another. I looked at my mirrors. Nothing. No people. No vehicles. Just rain and the glow of the church light. Another bang came from the rear doors. I told Marcy to stay on the line, then grabbed the tire thumper and cracked my driver window just enough to listen. The banging stopped. The CB came alive. No static this time. A man's voice said, "County roads closed ahead. Need you to step out, driver." Eli closed his eyes. I looked at the radio. The voice came again. "Step out so we can guide you around the washout." We were parked in a church lot. No county truck, no workers, no cones. I picked up the mic but didn't answer. The radio voice changed. "Harlan, open the door." That was when I put the truck back in gear. The air brakes hissed. And I pulled out of the church lot without checking whether anything was behind me. I heard one more bang from the trailer, then a dragging sound, like something metal scraping down the doors and falling away. Marcy was still on the phone, crying now. "David, police are coming. Stay inside." I can see headlights. I almost drove off the road. "What headlights?" "Down the street. They're just sitting there." Eli leaned forward and said, "Tell her to go to the bathroom." "No windows." I repeated it. Marcy didn't argue anymore. For the next 20 minutes, I drove through that storm while my wife sat locked in a bathroom 3 counties away, whispering that the headlights were still outside our house. Eli guided me. "Turn left before the bridge. Take the county road with the grain elevator. Slow down before the washed-out dip. Do not stop for the orange cones." And every time I thought about ignoring him, something proved he was right. At 2:42, Marcy whispered. The porch light stopped. Eli said, "Good." The headlights outside her house disappeared 2 minutes later. The road ahead opened up into a bigger highway with actual traffic. Not much, but enough. A fuel station glowed at the intersection, and I pulled in under the canopy, like I had reached land after drowning. I turned to Eli. He looked worse now. Paler, almost transparent around the edges, though. I didn't want to admit that's what I was seeing. I said, "You saved me." He looked at me with those tired eyes. "No," he said, "you stopped." "What does that mean?" He glanced toward the fuel station window. Inside, a clerk looked bored behind the counter. Eli said, "Some drivers don't. I looked away for half a second toward the store. When I looked back, the passenger seat was empty. No wet hoodie, no young man, no puddle, no impression in the seat. The seatbelt chime had never gone off once. I called police. I called dispatch. I called Marcy back and stayed on the phone until officers arrived at our house. They found tire marks on the street, but no vehicle, no damage, no person outside. The bridge ahead really had washed out. County crews had not reached it yet. No official detour had been set up. 2 orange cones were later found across the road, about half a mile before the bridge, but the county said they weren't theirs. That alone would have been enough to mess me up, but it got worse 3 days later. A state trooper called me about my statement. He asked me to describe the hitchhiker again. Young man, early 20s, dark hair, slim build, dark hoodie, jeans, pale face. He went quiet on the phone. Then he asked if I could come look at a photo. I did. The photo was from an old case file. 20 years earlier, almost to the week, a young man named Elias Reed had been walking home in a thunderstorm on that same highway after his car broke down. A truck hit him near a bend and kept going. The driver was never found. The trooper slid the picture across the desk. Same face, same hoodie, same tired eyes. I asked where he died. The trooper looked at me strangely. Right before the old bridge, the bridge that washed out, the bridge I never reached. I still don't pick up hitchhikers. But sometimes when I'm driving through heavy rain, my passenger seatbelt warning flickers once, even with nobody there, and every time it does, I slow down. The final story is the one that bothered me the most, because the driver did everything right. He checked the seal, watched his cameras, stayed near lights, and still brought something with him that never should have left that trailer. Story 3. The child in the rear camera. The first motion alert came through at 1:08 in the morning. I remember the time because I had just checked my L and muttered to myself that I had 2 hours and 17 minutes left before I had to shut down. My coffee was burnt, my back hurt, and the road behind me was so empty that the rear camera looked like it was filming the end of the world. Then the tablet beeped. Rear motion detected. I glanced at the screen mounted beside my dash. There was a little girl standing behind my trailer. I didn't slam the brakes. I didn't scream. I just stared for half a second too long, trying to make my brain understand what the camera was showing me. She looked maybe 8 years old, small, barefoot, wearing a yellow raincoat even though it wasn't raining. She stood directly behind the trailer doors, close enough that I couldn't see her feet beneath the bumper. Her head was tilted back like she was looking up at the camera. Then the feed glitched, one blink of static, and she was gone. My name is Marcus Ellison, but everybody calls me Mac. I was 55 then, driving mostly regional freight through Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. I had bad knees, worse sleep, and enough years on the road to know the difference between a real emergency and a system acting weird. That night, I was hauling a sealed dry van out of a demolition site near Wheeling, West Virginia. The load was going to a storage facility outside Columbus. On paper, it was nothing valuable. Salvaged fixtures, boxed records, old classroom furniture, palletized tile, copper pulled from the walls, and a few crates marked for historical review. The shipper had been strange from the beginning, not threatening, just strange. The building they were tearing down had been an old elementary school. Red brick, boarded windows, one of those places that look sad even in daylight. I arrived around 7:30 in the evening, and most of the demolition crew was already gone. 2 men in hard hats loaded me with a forklift, while a woman from the county office checked items against a manifest. She seemed nervous about the records crates, kept checking the labels, kept asking if my trailer had interior monitoring. I told her it did. Our company had installed a rear camera and a small battery-powered cargo cam after a string of trailer break-ins. The rear camera watched the doors and bumper. The cargo cam sat high in the front corner inside the trailer, mostly to catch shifting loads or anyone trying to open the doors after the seal was placed. She nodded when I told her that. Then she said, "Good, don't break the seal until Columbus." I told her I never broke seals unless dispatch told me to. She looked at me like that wasn't enough. The cargo seal went on at 9:14 p.m. I wrote the number on the bill of lading, took a picture, checked the latch, checked the hinges, and did my walk around under the buzzing yard light. Everything looked normal. Tires good, marker lights working, rear camera clean, seal intact. Before I climbed back into the cab, I noticed something painted on a concrete wall near the old school playground. A small yellow handprint, just one. It was low to the ground, about the height of a child's shoulder. The wall around it was cracked and stained from weather. Everything else had been tagged over or scraped away, but that handprint remained bright, almost fresh. I remember thinking that was odd. Then I forgot about it. I pulled out of the demolition site a little after 9:30 and headed west. Dispatch wanted the trailer dropped before sunrise because the storage facility had limited yard space. I wasn't thrilled about running back roads at night. But the load was light, the weather was clear, and I'd driven those routes plenty of times. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Just ordinary night driving, dark hills, patches of fog in the low places, the smell of hot brakes on long downgrades, and the low rattle of old furniture shifting somewhere behind me. I stopped once at a fuel island, topped off, grabbed coffee, and checked the seal again. Still intact. No marks around the doors, no footprints near the bumper. I remember the rear camera showing only wet pavement under the fuel station lights. Then, 40 minutes later, out on a 2-lane stretch with trees tight on both sides, the motion alert came through. Rear motion detected, and there she was, the little girl in the yellow raincoat. I slowed down gradually, eyes flicking between the road and the monitor. I told myself it was a reflection, maybe a road sign. Maybe the camera had glitched and frozen an image from somewhere else. But there were no houses back there, no vehicles behind me, no sidewalk. No reason for a child to be standing behind a moving trailer at 1 a.m. I checked the mirrors, empty road. I checked the monitor. Empty now. I got on the CB. Any westbound drivers near Route 250? I need a radio check. A trucker answered after a few seconds. Go ahead. I felt better just hearing another human voice. You got eyes on a white Volvo pulling a dry van westbound, county salvage load? Negative. I'm about 6 miles behind you. Haven't caught you yet. You see anybody walking out here? A pause. Walking? Kid maybe. Another pause. At 1 a.m? Yeah. No. You okay, driver? I almost said no. Instead I said camera glitch. Keep your eyes open. Copy that. The smart thing would have been to find a safe, lit place and stop. That's exactly what I planned to do. I checked the GPS and found a truck stop 22 miles ahead. Small place, but lit, with fuel pumps and cameras. I decided I would not stop on the shoulder. Not in the dark. Not for a camera glitch that might be bait or might be something worse. 10 minutes later, the tablet beeped again. Rear motion detected. I didn't want to look. I looked anyway. The girl was back. This time she wasn't standing behind the trailer. She was walking, not running. Walking, bare feet on pavement, yellow raincoat swaying, head tilted down now. She was directly behind my bumper, keeping perfect pace with a truck moving 58 miles an hour. I let off the accelerator. Speed dropped to 50. She stayed with me. 45, still there. I nudged the throttle back up to 60. She stayed. I checked the mirror, desperate to see something with my own eyes. Nothing. The road behind me was empty, but on the monitor, she was still walking. Then she raised her head. The camera was mounted high above the trailer, doors angled down. She looked directly up into it. Her face was pale and dirty. Her dark hair stuck to her cheeks. Her mouth moved like she was saying something, but the rear camera had no audio. The feed glitched again. Static. Then nothing. I called dispatch. A night dispatcher named Lonnie answered, half awake. "What's up, Mac? You seeing any alerts on trailer 6128? Hold on. Rear motion twice. Cargo cam normal. Door sensors normal. Seal status not electronic on that trailer. Why? I'm getting something behind me. Vehicle? No. Animal? No." He waited. I said, "Might be a kid." That woke him up. "Pull over and call 911. I'm not stopping on this road." "Mac, there's no shoulder and no lights. I've got a truck stop ahead. I'll stop there." Lonnie didn't argue long. He knew I was right. A driver getting out on a dark road because a camera says something weird is how drivers get robbed, hurt, or worse, he said. "Keep moving, I'll stay on." The third alert came 5 miles from the truck stop, but this one wasn't from the rear camera. It was from inside the trailer. I stared at the tablet. The view switched automatically. Inside the trailer, the cargo cam showed rows of strapped pallets and old-school furniture wrapped in plastic. The image was grainy and black and white, lit by the camera's infrared. The little girl stood in the aisle between 2 stacks of desks, yellow raincoat, bare feet, looking toward the front of the trailer. I yelled something I don't remember. Lonnie said, "What?" "Mac, what happened?" "She's inside." "Who's inside?" "The kid." "That's impossible." "I know." "Seal status?" "I haven't stopped, nobody opened it." "Door sensor normal." Lonnie went quiet. The girl in the cargo feed lifted one hand and placed it against a crate labeled Archived Student Records. The camera glitched. When the picture returned, she was gone. I kept driving. I didn't care about speed anymore. I wanted lights, people, cameras, anything that made the world feel solid again. The truck stop appeared ahead, like a rescue signal. A low building with 3 fuel lanes, a row of parking spots, and a sign buzzing in the dark. I pulled in under the brightest light, nose pointed toward the exit, and set the brakes. I did not get out right away. I checked the rear camera, empty. Cargo cam, empty. Passenger side mirror, empty. Driver side mirror, empty. Then I looked at the seal through the rear camera zoom, still intact, same number, clean. I called 911 and told them I was a commercial driver with possible unauthorized person in a sealed trailer. I did not mention the little girl walking behind me at highway speed. I did not mention the cargo cam. I just said someone might be in the trailer and I needed law enforcement present before opening it. A county deputy arrived 20 minutes later. A second trucker, a guy named Wallace, who had parked by the pumps, came over when he saw me standing outside with my flashlight, but not approaching the trailer. I explained enough to make him take a step back. "You heard anything in there?" he asked. "No." "You sure camera's not replaying old footage?" "That's what I'm hoping." The deputy checked my license, the bill of lading, and the seal number. He was professional, but I could tell he thought I was overreacting. I didn't blame him. A tired truck driver seeing a kid on a camera at 1 a.m. sounds like exhaustion until you're the one holding the tablet. He walked around the trailer. No footprints, no damage, no handprints on the doors. The seal was still locked through the latch. He asked permission to break it. I called dispatch and got approval. The deputy cut the seal. Wallace stood behind him with a heavy flashlight, and I stood off to the side with my tire thumper, feeling stupid and scared at the same time. The doors opened. Nothing came out. No person, no movement. Just the smell of old paper, dust, floor wax, and damp wood. The deputy climbed in first, hand near his sidearm, flashlight sweeping across the pallets. Wallace followed. I stayed at the door until they told me it was clear. Everything was strapped, nothing disturbed, no footprints in the dust, no gap big enough for a child to hide. The crate labeled archived sat exactly where the camera had shown it, except there was a small yellow handprint on the side, fresh paint. Wet enough that when the deputy touched it, with a gloved finger, it smeared. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Then Wallace said, "I'd refuse that load." The deputy looked at him. Wallace shrugged. "I'm serious. Dispatch didn't want me abandoning the trailer, but they also didn't want liability if there was some kind of contamination or trespass issue. After a lot of arguing on the phone, they told me to continue to Columbus with the deputy's report attached. And the trailer resealed. The deputy used an evidence tag and a temporary seal. I watched him close the doors. I watched him lock them. I watched him write the new seal number. Then I took pictures of everything. Before I left, Wallace came up to my window. He said, "What school did that come from?" I told him the name. His face changed. "You know about that place?" "No." He looked toward the trailer. My aunt taught there, long time ago. There was a girl. I didn't want to ask. I did anyway. "What girl?" He rubbed his jaw. "First grader. Disappeared during dismissal. Everybody thought she got into the wrong car or wandered off. They searched the building, the creek, woods, everything. Never found her." "What was her name?" He shook his head. "Don't remember, but I remember the raincoat. Yellow. My aunt used to talk about that raincoat." I drove away from that truck stop, feeling like the trailer had gotten heavier. For the next hour, no alerts came through. The road widened. Traffic picked up a little. I started telling myself the worst was over. Maybe somebody had staged something at the demolition site. Maybe the handprint had been there before and I just hadn't noticed. Maybe the camera feed had corrupted. Maybe Wallace's story had crawled into my head and started rearranging things. Then, at 3:26 a.m., the cargo cam triggered again. I looked. The girl was sitting on top of the student records crate. Her legs dangled over the side. Her bare feet swung gently back and forth. She was closer to the camera now. Close enough that I could see dirt under her fingernails. Her mouth moved. No audio. I called Lonnie. He answered on the first ring. "It happened again, didn't it? She's sitting on the crate." Lonnie breathed out slowly. "Mac, pull into the next way station. It's closed, but it's lit." "No, I'm not stopping again." "Mac, last time we opened it, she left a handprint. I'm not opening it again." The girl on the monitor turned her head, not toward the trailer doors, toward the front wall, toward me. Then the cargo cam tilted. That should not have been possible. It was mounted solid, bolted high into the front corner, but the image slowly changed angle, as if someone had reached up and turned the camera by hand. It pointed toward the front wall of the trailer. The metal wall filled the screen. From the other side of that wall came 3 soft knocks, not on the trailer, on the back of my cab. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. The sound had come from behind my seat. There is a small gap between the tractor and trailer, sure, but nobody can stand there while you're moving down the highway. Nobody can knock from that angle. The tablet feed switched. Not rear camera, not cargo camera. The screen showed my cab from behind me. I don't mean the driver-facing dash cam. This was lower, closer, as if a camera had been placed in the sleeper, aimed at the back of my seat. And in the feed, the little girl was standing directly behind me. I did not turn around. Every instinct told me not to. I looked at the actual sleeper mirror mounted above the passenger side. Nothing, just my bunk curtain. I looked at the tablet. She stood behind my seat, yellow hood up now, face hidden in shadow. Her small hand lifted. On the monitor, she touched the back of my driver's seat. At the same moment, I felt pressure against my back. Small fingers through the seat cushion. I almost drove into the median. A horn blasted beside me as a pickup swerved around, the driver holding down the horn and shouting something I couldn't hear. I corrected. The truck rocked. The trailer swayed. The tablet went black. Then a child's voice came through the cab speakers. Not loud, not distorted, clear. "Are we there yet?" I don't remember the next few minutes clearly. I remember calling dispatch and saying I was not stopping until I reached the storage yard. I remember Lonnie telling me to keep him on speaker. I remember him trying to talk in a calm voice, asking me road questions like he was afraid silence would make me look behind me. What mile marker? What lane? Any traffic? How's your speed? Professional questions, lifelines questions. The knocking came again every few miles. Tap, tap, tap. Sometimes from behind the cab, sometimes from inside the trailer. Once from the passenger window, even though I was moving 70 miles an hour and there was nothing outside but black highway. At 4:10, I crossed into the industrial stretch outside Columbus. Warehouses appeared. Streetlights, fenced lots, early morning workers smoking near loading docks. The normal world, coming back one ugly building at a time. The storage facility gate was closed when I arrived, but a guard came out after I laid on the horn. He looked irritated until he saw my face. I told him to call his supervisor and call police. He said, "For a sealed trailer." I said, "For whatever is inside it." We parked it under floodlights. Police arrived. A supervisor arrived. Dispatch stayed on the phone. The temporary seal was intact. The door sensors had never triggered. The rear camera showed nothing behind me for the final stretch. The cargo cam showed secured pallets and no movement. They opened the trailer. No girl. No footprints. No handprints besides the yellow one on the records crate. But one thing had changed. The crate was open, not broken. Open. The screws had been backed out neatly and placed in a small pile on top. Inside were old school records, class photos, attendance sheets, and file folders wrapped in brittle bands. The top folder had slid halfway out. The name on the tab was Emily Hart. A Columbus police officer later told me Emily Hart was the child who disappeared from that school in 1989. She had been 7 years old, last seen during a storm, wearing a yellow raincoat. I gave them the camera system, all of it. Rear camera footage, cargo cam footage, dash cam, audio logs, dispatch call recordings. For 2 weeks, nobody told me anything. Then my safety manager called me into the office. He looked uncomfortable. He said the cameras had not recorded any child, not behind the trailer, not inside it, not in the cab. Every motion alert was real. But the footage showed only empty road, strapped cargo, and me driving with a look on my face that made me hard to watch. The cargo cam never tilted. The cab feed I saw didn't exist in the system. There was no camera in the sleeper. I asked about the audio. He didn't answer right away. Then he played the final file. It was from the cab microphone, time-stamped 4:12 a.m., right as I pulled through the storage facility gate. At first, there was only engine noise. Then my own voice saying, "Call police." Then a child whispered from somewhere very close to the mic. I finally got a ride home. I don't haul demolition salvage anymore. I don't haul school furniture, records, playground equipment, none of it. People laugh when I say that, so I don't explain. I just refuse the load and take the hit. A month after it happened, I got a padded envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a printed still from my rear camera. The company swore they didn't send it. Police said it wasn't part of their evidence package. It showed the back of my trailer under the storage yard floodlights. Just after I parked, the doors were closed. The seal was intact, and standing beside the bumper was the little girl in the yellow raincoat. This time, she wasn't looking at the camera. She was holding someone's hand. Only the person beside her had been cropped out of the frame. All I could see was an adult arm reaching down from the edge of the picture. Wet sleeve, pale hand, and on the back of that hand, written in yellow paint, was one word: home. Those were 3 truck driver horror stories from roads, storms, and deliveries that should have stayed ordinary.